Hello, and thanks for the good response to the first video. I want to pursue this question of what we are a bit more today. What is it that people recognise about us? What makes us a unique person? And I'm not talking here about appearance or those social masks we wear when people form their first impressions of us. These things are important, of course. I'm talking about what is it that people who really know us recognise about us and say, oh yeah, that's so and so, that's so them. And the things which define our personality are the things we do, the actions we carry out, the things we say, and these of course are determined by the things that we think, the thoughts that we have, the way that we feel. And those who really come to know us well can see the layer beneath our thoughts, deeds and words. They can see the values that we possess, the priorities we have, our likes and our dislikes, all of these things which make us unique. And so each one of us is actually a pattern of consciousness which has a completely different setting to everybody else, determined by all of our little personal preferences, likes, dislikes, ideas, goals, ambitions, passions. And these things project through the things we do, the things we say, and these are the things that make our personality recognisable to others. So we're a pattern, and as we go through life, our patterns are mingled with and tempered by the patterns of the other people we meet. If we're in a crowd, we may not stand out, depending upon whether our personal pattern is emphasised or dampened by those of the people around us. And this will again vary depending upon the circumstance and the crowd that we're a part of. But we can see our personality as a specific, recognisable pattern of consciousness which expresses itself in certain ways. And obviously it's very complex. There are a whole number of factors, and I've only touched upon the most basic ones. Each of those can be subdivided, but we really don't want to get down to that sort of level of nitty-gritty. We're just trying to form a base definition here. So we are a recognisable pattern of consciousness which is shaped by our personal likes, dislikes, motivations, plans and passions, and these things are recognised by others through the things that we say and do and the way in which these express our thoughts and feelings. So that's how our personality projects itself and is recognised through the pattern it creates. This pattern is demonstrably recognisable. If somebody hears a report, somebody who knows me well, that I was seen on such and such a date doing such and such a thing, that will either conform to their knowledge of my personality or it won't, and they will either believe it or disbelieve it accordingly. So if we are a pattern, how recognisable is it? And let me just draw a couple of shapes here. If I show you those shapes, you immediately know They're a circle and a square. You recognise them. Except, of course, they aren't. I mean, the circle, the line doesn't even join properly. It's not perfectly circular, it's just been drawn freehand. The square, the lines aren't straight. It hasn't been drawn with a ruler. There's no precision there. And yet those shapes are still recognisable. And this is how people recognise our personality pattern, because nobody except ourselves can know us that perfectly. But we're still recognisable. And this is quite an astonishing thing when you think about it. The way that people can know us well enough to recognise us through our personalities. And of course it's the personality which most people are interested in when they start thinking about questions of, is there life after death? Will I survive? They're thinking of their personality. We were talking about ghosts last time. One of the most popular theories about hauntings today is what's called the stone tape theory, which postulates that when an event with a certain charge of emotion, such as, say, a violent death, takes place in a certain locality, or when that locality is accustomed to the same event being repeated over and over again, such as somebody's daily routine in their own home, then it becomes memorised and imprinted upon that location. It's stored like a recording, and this can be replayed at times when the conditions are correct. That's one theory of ghosts and why ghosts often seem to repeat the same series of actions, because it's actually a playback of a recording. This doesn't explain, of course, those instances when you actually interact with a ghost. And although they're rarer, they do happen. My own experience related in the last video is a case in point. We exchanged words. Well, if stone tape theory allows for the replaying of a pattern of personality, is that so amazing then? Could that explain a few things? And if a personality pattern can be replayed as a recording, is that pattern then conscious? Does that person then relive in their ghost, even if only briefly? Is that possible? And that leads on to further questions. If we think of somebody we know well who's died, and we relive our memories of them in our minds, are they present in those memories? Are they actually there? Does replaying their pattern of personality in our minds bring them back? Interesting questions, aren't they? Because if we are a pattern of personality, and that is an expression of consciousness, does that pattern itself imply consciousness when it's replayed in memory, in thought? Is that old saying that we live on in the memories of those who knew us and loved us, is there some truth in that? I'm just throwing these ideas out there at the moment. We're going to be taking this a lot further. But it's food for thought, isn't it? Because if that pattern of thoughts, deeds and actions and all of the personal qualities that underlie it, that define our personality, if that is our personality, then replaying it must bring us back to some degree. And is it then conscious? Because, as with these drawings, even if you don't know everything about the person, even if it's not perfect, you still know that that's a square and that's a circle. It's still recognisable. It's close enough. Is the same true with personality patterns? This is the first layer of questioning when we start to look at ourselves and we look at the possibility of our survival of death and the definition of ghosts and spirits. But we're still only scratching the surface. Because the pattern of our personality, of course, isn't all that we are. There's something lacking from it. And that is that spark of consciousness itself. It is the sense of self itself. And that's what I want to talk about next time. I'm keeping these bite-sized so that you can think about what I'm saying and so that we can take these talks in all sorts of different directions. But next time we're going to be talking about the actual sense of self, of self-awareness, of self-consciousness, and how that fits in to things. Hope you'll join me again then. Thanks for listening.